Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we dig through, well, just stacks of articles, research, our own notes really, to pull out the most vital bits of knowledge, the key insights, just for you. Our mission really is to give you that shortcut, help you get properly informed without drowning in all the noise. Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving right into a world that feels like it's shifting under our feet. You know,
Right.
massive changes, all connected. We'll be hitting everything from the future of geopolitics, this new space race that's really heating up, fundamental demographic changes too, which are fascinating,
hmm
the huge impact of artificial intelligence, of course, and also those critical climate tipping points. It's a lot, but we'll navigate it together.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, what the sources are showing pretty consistently is this fundamental shakeup in global power. Yeah, that old model. Power concentrated in just a few places. That's really starting to change, to spread out. And it's not just one thing causing it. It's complex. You've got economic shifts, amazing tech leaps, like you said, the space race, new energy and climate policies coming in, alliances are shifting, political, military, and very importantly, these deep demographic and social changes underneath it all.
You know, it's often those quieter forces, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the demographics piece, that's where it gets really interesting for me. Our sources map out what the last 150 years, you see these huge baby booms, people living longer, mortality dropping, and now this completely new thing, growing old age dependency. First time in history, really, and it's destabilizing age structures everywhere. What does that actually mean on the ground, economically?
Well, a key idea that pops up everywhere is the demographic dividend.
Right.
It's basically the economic boost, the benefits that can happen when those big baby boom groups enter the workforce. Productivity goes up, savings tend to increase.
Okay.
East Asia's economic miracle is like the classic example. Some research suggests that demographic shift alone, just that, accounted for maybe up to a third of their amazing growth.
A third.
Wow. It's a powerful engine, yeah, if you harness it properly.
That is a huge impact. I was really struck by the example of Ireland, the Celtic tiger, in the 90s. There you had a falling birth rate quite rapidly, which meant a bigger slice of the population was working age. And the sources stress how policies helped, like opening the economy, free secondary education. And this detail really caught my eye. The boom apparently accelerated after contraception was legalized. Just shows all the layers involved.
It does. But it's really important to see the other side, too. Take Latin America. Around the same time, they had similar demographic chances, similar potential dividends as East Asia, but, well, mostly economic stagnation.
Why the difference?
It really hammers home that the dividend isn't guaranteed. It depends on the policy environment, as the sources put it. And often the key difference seems to be things like strong institutions, rule of law, really tackling corruption. Without that foundation, even good demographics might not be enough.
Right. You need the framework.
Exactly. And that leads to a really unique challenge now for developed countries. They're facing this high old age dependency and falling populations overall for the first time. The solutions being talked about involve, adaptable markets, adaptable policies, things like reforming Social Security, which sometimes actually encourages people to retire early right now.
That's counterintuitive.
It can be, yeah.
And it's not just internal stuff. Another thing that came up, which is fascinating, is how people respond. Migration. In places like the U.S., the sources show migrants are overwhelmingly of working age. That gives a significant boost to the worker to non-worker ratio, which is obviously a big economic plus, but it also brings challenges, doesn't it, for the countries they arrive in and the ones they leave.
Definitely.
It really underlines the need for, I guess, smart institutions that can create genuine win-win situations.
That's the goal.
Okay, so speaking of these huge shifts, another massive driver is this accelerating new space race.
It's just not governments anymore, is it? Private companies are huge players now, driven by, well, money, commercial interest, right alongside the state agencies. Feels like a whole new frontier is opening.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating to me is seeing these fundamental tech principles like Moore's Law, Wright's Law. Cheaper, faster, better.
Exactly. They describe how tech gets more powerful and cheaper as you make more of it. And applying that to space tech is just transformative. I mean, we're getting spacecraft that are incredibly capable, but also so much cheaper than before. It's
Right.
effectively democratizing access to space,
Yeah.
opening it up way beyond just the big nation states.
The numbers are just wild when you look at the growth. I saw data points like, 186 rocket launches in 2022, a record. The space market projected to hit $1 trillion by 2030, active satellites potentially tripling by then.
It's exponential.
And the real kicker, launch cost to low Earth orbit, LEO, down by over 95%. This isn't just, more weather satellites. It's changing national security, creating totally new economic sectors, shifting power to agile private companies, kind of like the early internet days, maybe.
It's a good parallel. And that fundamental shift, it has deep geopolitical consequences. This new frontier thinking has led to this term, astropolitic.
Astropolitic.
Yeah, the idea that controlling low Earth orbit is basically critical for global dominance. One source puts it very dramatically. Who controls low Earth orbit controls near-Earth space. Who controls near-Earth space dominates Earth. Who dominates Earth determines the destiny of humankind.
Wow, that's some heavy stuff. Puts a different spin on satellite launches.
It does.
And you can really see how space is becoming this tool for, soft power projection. The sources point to China's sudden acceleration in space. Specific things like landing the Chang'e 4 Pro on the far side of the moon back in 2019 and building their own space station, Tiangong pointedly, after they were banned from the ISS. Even things like letting foreign journalists watch launches. It's all part of projecting capability, projecting power back here on Earth.
Absolutely. And you see these different philosophies emerging when you compare countries. The U.S. tends to frame space competition as mostly a zero-sum game. It's about leadership, staying ahead, countering rivals.
Okay.
China, on the other hand, talks more about a win-win strategy, looking for partnerships. And then you have the European Union working through ESA, the European Space Agency, really emphasizing cooperation and peaceful development. So different wrenches on the global stage.
A complex chessboard indeed. And it feels vital to remember as we talk about all this that artificial intelligence, AI, is kind of a thread running through almost everything, isn't it? From geopolitics to how society functions.
Yeah.
It's not just another technology. It feels like something more fundamental. So let's maybe connect these big tech shifts, down to our daily lives. Specifically how AI is just fundamentally changing work and education. I was really caught by that Dell Technologies 2030 vision, this idea of human-machine partnerships. Can you unpack that a bit? What's the core idea there?
Well, the Dell vision really emphasizes playing to strength. Humans are good at creativity, passion, empathy. Machines excel at speed, automation, data processing.
Okay.
And it projects that, get this, 85% of jobs in 2030 haven't even been invented yet.
85%.
Yeah. Which, if true, completely changes the game for learning. It means in-the-moment learning, using things like augmented reality, virtual reality becomes critical because the skill of gaining new knowledge actually becomes more valuable than just having existing knowledge stored away.
That's a massive shift for how we think about education. And you can see why that necessitates this urgent change in education itself. Our sources found, 3/4 of teachers now prefer simulation-based assessment, SVA, over old school exams and essays.
Taking cues from how healthcare uses simulations for practical skills.
It shows educators are already thinking differently about assessing for a future we can't fully predict.
Exactly. And when you ask about the skills needed for this future, everyone's pretty much on the same page. Parents, teachers, students, they all point to AI literacy, cybersecurity skills, and critical thinking. They want those woven into the curriculum.
Makes sense.
What's also interesting, though, is some educators are starting to question if traditional subjects like math or computer science are even relevant anymore in their current form. About 16% question math, 22% computer science.
Wow, questioning math itself.
In its current teaching format, yeah.
Yeah.
It shows how profound the rethinking is.
But alongside all this future focus, there are clearly big worries right now. Stress management came out as the top life skill parents and teachers want for kids. And there's that paradox about screen time, right? Half of parents worry kids have too much. But at the same time, they see huge benefits for online learning. 52% agree, even higher in the UK, 68%. And for just staying connected, it's complicated.
Very.
And then there's the really tough stuff. Misinformation, deepfakes, the numbers are stark. Kids are seeing faked images, 85% exposure, deepfake videos, 73%, even extremist content, 24%. What does that do to their ability to figure out what's real?
It creates a massive challenge. I mean, alarmingly, nearly 2/3 of teachers in Austria think kids struggle to tell fact from fiction.
64%.
Yeah, and almost 40% of parents admit they struggle to identify truth online themselves.
So there's a real generational information gulf, as the sources call it.
Definitely. And it gets worse because of what's termed the AI knowledge gap in schools. You've got 63% of students wishing their teachers knew more about AI. Many kids are resorting to self-teaching AI stuff through social media.
Because the teachers haven't been trained.
Largely, yes. 75% of teachers in Europe lack formal AI training. And this unequal access to AI tools, between fee-paying schools and others, it risks creating a real two-tier education system, making inequality worse.
That's a really worrying prospect. But, okay, there is an optimistic path forward suggested, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This idea of a combined approach.
Yeah.
AI tech plus human teachers.
Exactly. A majority of teachers, 59%, and parents, 51%, see that as the best way.
How does that work in practice?
Well, AI can do things like personalized learning paths for each student, give instant feedback, which is huge for kids with special educational needs, and critically, it can take a lot of the admin burden off teachers, grading, paperwork.
Freeing them up for the human stuff?
Precisely. Coaching, mentoring, fostering empathy, developing that critical thinking AI can't replicate.
That really reframes the teacher's role.
It does. And many teachers, 70% in the UK apparently, go so far as to say AI access should be a basic human right, just like having internet access.
Wow. Okay. So AI is reshaping how we live, learn, work.
Mm.
But there's this other huge long-term transformation looming, the environment, specifically climate tipping points.
Mm.
The sources define these as thresholds, right? Points beyond which the Earth's climate system flips into a new state, undergoing rapid, irreversible transformation. They use that Jenga analogy, pulling out blocks slowly, then one wrong move, and the whole tower collapses.
It's a good visual, yeah. Although it's important to clarify, based on the research, while there are about 16 parts of the climate system flagged as at risk of tipping, most tipping point changes will unfold over very long time periods. We're often talking thousands of years for the full effect.
Okay, so not always like flipping a switch tomorrow.
Not usually, no. But the commitment to that long-term change can get locked in much, much sooner based on warming levels we reach.
Right. So what are those pressing concerns, the ones that could be triggered sooner rather than later?
Well, for a place like Australia, looking out over the next few decades, the biggest identified risk, the great unknown, is far greater sea level rise. That's mainly linked to the potential collapse of the Greenland and West Antarctic ice sheets.
And scientists are pretty confident these are real tipping points.
High confidence, yes. And they could potentially be triggered by the warming we've already caused, or just a little bit more. If they go, they could add something like 0.5 meter to 1 meter per century to global sea levels for a very long time.
1 meter per century.
But it's not just sea level. Other sources point to things like the Amazon rainforest. If that collapses, it could fundamentally change weather patterns globally. Think widespread droughts, major disruptions to food systems far beyond South America. That has huge geopolitical and migration knock-on effects.
So it's not just about coastlines, it's about the fundamental systems of the planet.
Exactly. It's deeply interconnected.
So the overall message from this climate research seems pretty stark then.
Absolutely. First and foremost, it just hammers home the importance of urgent emission reduction. We have to limit further warming.
But
also, for decision makers, for planners, it really highlights the need for smart adaptation planning now, especially for things like critical infrastructure, power grids, water systems, transport stuff with long lifespans that can't easily afford to fail. We need to build resilience for the future we're already creating.
And here's a detail that really brought that long-term commitment home for me. Even if you don't factor in these potential tipping points, just based on the emissions we're projected to have put out by 2030, we've already locked the planet into more than 1 meter of sea level rise by the year 2300.
That's the inertia in the system.
It just underscores the huge, irreversible long-term consequences already baked in for coastal communities everywhere.
Yeah.
A legacy we're creating now.
Indeed.
Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive today. It's quite a landscape. We've looked at global power shifts driven by this mix of economics, technology, demographics, these new frontiers opening up in space driven by new actors and economics. The really deep impact AI is having, reshaping work, reshaping education, and these critical long-term environmental changes, the tipping points, already underway.
Yeah, and what it all really reinforces, I think, for you listening, is the central idea. Real understanding in this kind of world, this rapidly changing world, isn't just about knowing what's changing. It's about understanding how our systems, our policies, our own human capabilities need to adapt. That
Right.
focus on adaptability, on the ability to gain new knowledge, like we talked about with education, that becomes absolutely crucial for everyone.
And that's really where the relevance is, isn't it? The application for you. It lies in building our collective muscle for foresight, for critical thinking, and for being ready to adapt proactively, even when things feel uncertain. So what does this all mean for us going forward? We've really tried to unpack just how interconnected everything is, from the biggest global shifts right down to our daily lives.
Yeah, we've navigated some complex territory, the changing balance of global power, this booming space economy, those fundamental demographic transitions,
Mm.
the way AI is transforming how we learn and work, and those irreversible long-term climate impacts already locked in.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If that ability to gain new knowledge really is becoming more valuable than the knowledge itself, and if we see students already self-teaching complex topics like AI on social media because, well, formal education is struggling to keep up, what does that really imply for our own continuous lifelong responsibility, our need to keep learning, keep adapting, keep critically assessing information, not just for ourselves, but really for the future of the shared world we're all building? Something to think about.